Gestational diabetes is a diabetes that only happens when you're pregnant. And then once you have the baby, it goes away. Gestational diabetes is, like, in very layman's terms, it's hormonal changes that happen too aggressively because of the placenta and the growth of the baby. Every time or anytime a woman gets pregnant, your body has to release more insulin to keep up with the demands of growing a baby. And very simply, gestational diabetes is your body not being able to keep up with the insulin that's needed to be produced in order to grow this baby.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jenn Trepeck, your host and health coach, here with you every week, as always, for wellness without the weirdness. And this month is 6 years of this podcast. And admittedly, I'm in a bit of disbelief that this will be the first time we have talked specifically about this topic. And what's even more wild than that, so as of 2023, it affects almost 10% of pregnancies in the US, and even more, that's according to the American Diabetes Association and the CDC. More than that, it isn't only prevalent in the US. There was a recent meta-analysis that showed even higher rates in Eastern and Southeastern Asia and Africa. So to talk through gestational diabetes with us, I have a truly incredible expert. She is the Chief Success Officer of RenewRx, a maternal health platform transforming how prenatal care is delivered, personalized, and reimbursed. A certified nutritional practitioner and mindful eating specialist, she blends clinical insight with a warm, practical approach to support women through pregnancy and beyond. At RenewRx, she leads the coaching, client success, and community strategy, ensuring every mom feels seen, heard, and empowered while navigating gestational diabetes and building lifelong healthy habits. Her career has spanned culinary arts, clinical nutrition, and tech-enabled health coaching, all anchored in making evidence-based nutrition simple, accessible, and sustainable. You see why we get along. When she's not working, you will find her testing new recipes, chasing after her toddler, or enjoying a perfectly brewed coffee. Without further ado, I give you Kelly Carter.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. And
likewise.
On 6 years. That's incredible.
Thank you. It's wild. And welcome officially to the Salad with a Side of Fries family. We're excited.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to start with a little bit of your story and then unpack all things gestational diabetes after we tell our members what they're getting this week. All right, friends. Do you have access to the Happy Healthy Hub? All right, if not, you want to be a member. So you get a recipe each week delivered to your inbox. You get curated articles and additional discounts from me and our partners. You get interview episodes like this one in full video, including behind the scenes content, a community with the ability to post and comment on other people's posts, plus access to a 24/7 AMA or Ask Me Anything to target your specific questions or challenges. You can upvote other people's questions, see past Q&A, and so much more. All of this is yours for just $12 a month, or you prepay the whole year at once and you get it for less. Your recipe this week is for wholesome, no-bake carrot cake bites. They are certainly a healthier option for that something sweet. They don't have protein powder in them. So you could experiment with adding it if you wanted to. I believe not everything has to have protein powder in it. And there's awesome ingredients in here otherwise. Anyway, they're certainly packed with blood sugar friendly ingredients to begin with. So if you want this recipe, if you want this episode in full video, plus access to our community chat and the 24/7 Ask Me Anything, go to asaladwithasideofFries.com/membership. From there, you'll click subscribe now and then follow the prompts to enter your payment info, create your login to access the hub and all of your benefits. Remember, you're going to asaladwithasideofFries.com/membership. Now, even more than ever, it's a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. And this also helps you support the podcast and this community so we can continue to bring you new episodes and experts every week. So on top of this week's episode in full video with behind the scenes pieces and your 24/7 Ask Me Anything, you're going to get this week's recipe for the wholesome no-bake carrot cake bites. Okay, Kelly. From our last conversation, I know you were always curious about nutrition and wellness after watching Biggest Loser when you were in high school. So will you share with everybody, what you saw that intrigued you and what you learned later about what you saw?
Yes. I remember when I was younger watching The Biggest Loser and being in awe of how quickly, and again, TV magic, but how quickly your body could change when you changed the environment that you were in. And later on, really realizing that that environment they created was not actually a healthy one. So, but I think the intensity of that change really drove me to understanding like, wow, the body's like pretty incredible. And we're living in a world that's very different than 100 years ago and beyond. We're living in a world where we have generally access to everything and anything in almost an instant. And learning, through school afterwards that a lot of who we are as humans haven't changed very much, like in hundreds or thousands of years, but our environment has. That really pushed me to want to go into the health and wellness industry because I saw a lot of people around me struggling, and it was semi-selfish as well. Like I was like, I don't want to be like this. I want to figure out, how I can continue to prioritize my health. And The Biggest Loser really sparked that for me.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Like we see, TV magic, right? But it's so out of their ordinary lives, so dramatic, so intense. It makes for great TV, not so much real life, And so then, with that sort of sparked your interest in nutrition and health and all of those things. What led you to, or how did you come to focus on gestational diabetes?
Oh my goodness. So I went to school for human nutrition. That's what sparked, understanding nutrition, understanding what does the body actually need? Because the one thing that The Biggest Loser really did not hyper focus on was the nutrition piece. And they really focused on the exercise piece, which is, in my opinion, kind of secondary to what your body actually needs. So understanding that whole, like, what does your body need to thrive in this environment? And that led me to the Institute of Holistic Nutrition, where I got an even deeper understanding of not just food, but also like stress management and understanding sleep and like the movement piece. What I find in our society is we love to isolate things a lot. And when you isolate anything when it comes to your health, you don't get healthy ultimately. So that led me to really focusing, like my first focus was on weight loss because it's so prevalent. And my first couple of years as a nutrition coach was frustrating because I would spend a lot of time creating these incredible programs and meal plans and everything. And I found that my clients were motivated for 3 days at a time. And that led me to really understanding this is like everything that we do is very psychological. So that's when I went more into the psychology of nutrition and behavior change to actually spark the change that I wanted to from these incredible programs that I was making. I started my own business and very serendipitously met the founder and CEO of RenewRx through a business networking group. And she loved my approach on behavior change and like the education, but taking it a step forward with behavior change and creating that roadmap for individuals. And she had just become a professionally trained chef. So food is medicine. And we originally wanted to support type 2 diabetes. And the reason is because type 2 diabetes is ever prevalent, and something like 67 or higher now % of people in North America are either pre-diabetic and don't know it, or they're diagnosed with diabetes. So it's just this, like, that's 2/3 of humans in North America are struggling with blood sugar imbalances. And what we found was with market research, very few people, no one who was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes came to us to talk about it. We had type 1s, and then we had gestational diabetes. And we want to create a program that you, as the person that we want to support, wants, not that we think what you want. And what we saw with the type 1s was they were very set in their ways because it's a diagnosis that they've had for decades, potentially. And with the gestational diabetes, that was the founder's sister actually had it when she was pregnant. And when we were talking to her and other people, it was the biggest calling for us because these are women that really want and are like open to understanding, okay, what can I do for myself, but more for the baby? So these women are just wanting all this information and to absorb it and really to even carry it forward. And that's where we really started hyper focusing on that. We focus on diabetes and pregnancy now, not just gestational. Mm-hmm. However, the gestational diabetes ended up being our entry point because these women were actively searching for it and not finding any support. And yeah, so kind of a long story, but that's
But I think it's such a quintessential example of how our typical Western medicine system says, here's a problem, figure out how to fix it, because our solution is, a pharmaceutical that may or may not be the best option for you at this specific time. Yep. Right? So before we sort of dive too deep, I want to make sure everybody's on the same page, right? So we have an episode, I'll tell everybody. So we have an episode coming up in the fall for Diabetes Awareness Month on type 1. What we talk about all the time is blood sugar balance and, type 2 essentially, right? Gestational diabetes, like I said in our intro, we haven't really focused on. So will you define for everybody gestational diabetes so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely. Gestational diabetes is a diabetes that only happens when you're pregnant. And then once you have the baby, it goes away. Gestational diabetes is, like in very layman's terms, it's hormonal changes that happen too aggressively because of the placenta and the growth of the baby. Every time or anytime a woman gets pregnant, your body has to release more insulin to keep up with the demands of growing a baby. And very simply, gestational diabetes is your body not being able to keep up with the insulin that's needed to be produced in order to grow this baby. It can be extremely positively influenced by lifestyle factors such as what you eat, how you move, managing stress, and things like that. And that's what RenewRx is. We are an extension actually of their provider. So we work with their doctors on how we can balance the lifestyle piece. And then if insulin or any other medical intervention is needed, they have their doctor as well.
Yeah. And we're going to talk more about, all these lifestyle choices and interventions that we can employ. But I think let's address some of the misconceptions, because I think gestational diabetes, as you said, right, it leaves women feeling confused, frustrated, not really understanding what's happening. And I think, let's clear up some of these. So maybe one that I hear all the time is like, I failed, that I did this.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the times that is the reaction because these women are told on a phone call, you failed the blood test, right? So they're actively being told this. And now there's just this whole misconception of what the blood test is actually or what the glucose test is actually testing. And it's really testing how efficient is your body pancreas at releasing insulin.
And so recognizing it's a function of the pancreas, and you mentioned before the placenta. So say more about the placenta's role.
Yeah, I mean, the placenta is its own organ. It is this incredibly complicated organ that has its own metabolism and that grows as often as the baby grows, has its own hormonal panel. Like it's this, you're growing a baby and you're growing a placenta. To be honest, it's very strange. I have had 2 kids, and when you literally have to, no one talks about this. You birth the baby and then you birth the placenta. Like it's this thing that you're growing. And again, that's what is putting so much pressure on the body. So if a lot of the times, if you have a history of blood sugar sensitivity as well, you are at risk simply because your body's already struggling. And now this baby's just going to put that much more pressure in a good way, like in a way, the baby's beautiful and everything. And I think understanding that piece of what gestational diabetes is can be really helpful. And I used to do all of the onboarding with our clients. And I explained it very similar to how I'm explaining it now. And you could even tell like these women are like, oh, okay, I get it. And I wish someone told me that when I got diagnosed.
Right. So you mentioned quickly, and I want to go back to make sure everybody heard it, that our blood sugar sensitivity heading into pregnancy plays a big role in the likelihood of our developing gestational diabetes, right? Who else tends to be at higher risk?
So when, I hate the term, but if you have a geriatric pregnancy, which is, again, hate that term so much because you're 35 or older. As we get older, women, we get more sensitive to sugars as well, mostly because of hormonal changes that happen. By 37, you can start seeing perimenopausal like symptoms. And we're not going to go into menopause right now, but menopause is this huge hormonal change that happens in women's bodies. And it's extremely like your blood sugars can be affected by that as well. So the older you are, the more at risk you are, again, because your body's getting older. Typically, if you are overweight, it can. What I've seen is a lot of women, like the spectrum of women are like 120 pounds to say even 320 pounds, right? So I don't know how much weight can affect it, but if you're carrying more weight because of diet and lifestyle related issues, not because of metabolic issues, you're probably going to be more at risk as well. And that's simply because anytime that you eat carbohydrates or anytime that you're not doing something within your lifestyle that is causing your blood sugars to spike super high. So that could be you're super stressed all the time, you're not moving very much, and you're eating a higher refined carbohydrate diet, that can drive up your blood sugar levels. And the second that your blood sugar levels start to rise, more insulin is going to be needed to produce to support those sugars. And that causes extra stress on your pancreas. So depending what your lifestyle is like beforehand, that's like, my goal is to get women to really understand how effective 7 months before you get pregnant, like not that, it's super easy to get pregnant, but that's kind of a very specific number that a lot of research is saying if you're able to really focus on your diet and your lifestyle 7 months before you conceive, your chances of having a healthy pregnancy increase by at least like 30%. It's ridiculous. And I truly believe that's because you're moving more, you may be eating a little bit healthier, you're somewhat maybe managed. I feel like stress is a whole other ballgame, but it's been so rewarding to be able to educate a lot of women about this because so many people are coming, like they're being diagnosed with this gestational diabetes and they're really not understanding why or how.
Yeah. And then, so by that token too, so you also mentioned that gestational diabetes is during pregnancy. And for a lot of people post-pregnancy, their body can return to better production or response, right, to insulin. But there is an increased likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes if you experience gestational diabetes, right?
7 out of 10 women can go on to developing type 2 later, 5 to 10 years after having their baby. And there's so much that you can do in my mind to be preventative and
Agreed.
that really understanding your blood sugar levels throughout the rest of your life.
Yes, for sure. So by that token, right, you are not doomed. As I say all the time with so many things, you are not doomed. And as you already mentioned, and we say all the time with everything health related, right, we want to look at nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress. So we're going to talk about each one of those in turn. Coming up, we'll take a moment to highlight our partner for this episode. Big thanks to DNA Miracles for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. Because every child is a miracle, DNA Miracles provides the highest quality body and wellness products designed for babies, children, and expectant mothers. All products are gentle, easy to use, and 100% effective when used as directed. DNA Miracles partner with leading health professionals and scientists who follow the highest standards in ingredient selection to create the most effective skin, hair, and health solutions. As natural as possible, DNA Miracles is the best and safest option on the market for you and your little miracle. From expert pediatricians to real family testimonials, everyone has fallen in love with DNA Miracles. So if you know someone maybe you or someone are having a baby, I highly recommend the DNA Miracles Bath Time products. So there's the natural foaming wash and shampoo. As baby gets a little bit bigger, there's the 3-in-1 shampoo, body wash, and bubble bath, plus the natural hydrating body lotion. By the way, that one is great for everybody in the family because as we think about skin-to-skin contact, what the products we're all using make a difference. So everybody can use the DNA Miracles products. All of these, by the way, are $19.95 or less each. And those prices are before your 10% off and free shipping for being a salad with a side of fries listener. So to get 10% off and free shipping on your order, text the word miracles, MIRACLES, to 833-801-0500. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word miracles, MIRACLES, to 833-801-0500. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, Kelly, so let's take nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress in terms of action steps to support those with gestational diabetes. So I suppose let's start with nutrition, which is, my baby, your baby, and So talk to us about, what we want to focus on when it comes to the nutrition piece.
Mm-hmm. Biggest thing is balance. So when you're diagnosed with gestational diabetes, typically people rush to carbs. And yes, carbs are what is going to drive your blood sugars up the most efficiently and quickly. And I guess the best tip that I can say about carbohydrates is don't eat carbs naked, and always start by eating your veggies for lunches and dinners first. The order of eating can be so impactful on your blood sugar levels. We use continuous glucose monitoring with our clients, and I use it all the time myself because I just love that data. And we find that the order of eating, so having your veggies first, carbs towards the end of the meal, can decrease your blood sugars by 50 to 75% of what it would be if you started eating the carb in the first place. So that would be my biggest tip, is balance and really making sure that you're not super worried about carbohydrates. You never eat them naked or alone. You always eat them with some sort of fiber, protein, fat. Because I would say a lot of clients Google first, which again, if you're not getting really good resources right when you get diagnosed, very understandable. And they're seeing keto, they're seeing low carb diets. And with gestational diabetes, the only reason I really don't like that it's called a diabetes is because the requirements of carbohydrates are more impactful than any of the other diabetes diagnoses. So don't be afraid of carbs. Just make sure that you're having them with proteins, fiber, and other fats.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. So for everybody, we have a nutrition nugget called Naked Carbs to dig in a little bit deeper on that. But I think one thing that's really important that you started to touch on is like when somebody Googles and what comes back are these diets, and I rarely use that word, but these, are definitely diets that tend to have you cutting out whole food groups, that especially during pregnancy can be extremely detrimental because we need those nutrients. So can you just speak to also understanding, we talked about the order of the food, but also the balance on the plate and ensuring that we're getting what our body needs, as you said, not just for ourselves, for the baby, and for the placenta.
Exactly. Thank you for mentioning the placenta, because it will get mad at you if you don't eat enough carbs. In terms of a balanced plate, the most effective way to eat, and it is very challenging, however, it never fails. Half your volume of your plate is vegetables, like in leafy greens. I usually say like carrot, celery, cucumber, cauliflower, broccoli, like not the potatoes or things like that, but fibrous vegetables, half the volume of your plate. And then a quarter of your plate, any type of carb. So that could be, again, potatoes, rice, bread, whatever you want. And then proteins. And ideally, we're doing meat proteins when pregnant. It's a little bit more challenging when someone is vegetarian. It is doable. However, when you're vegetarian, you're typically, especially if you love your lentils and your beans, a lot of people assume that's my protein and it's your carb as well. So having a quarter of plate of protein, quarter plate of carbs, and then half your plate of, like, volume wise of vegetables, that is a really good standard to start with, and then adjust as your body says, like, yes or no to, and then sprinkling fats in there as well.
Yeah. And I think this kind of brings up, all of this brings up the piece that we haven't talked about, which is, and I hate the word normal, so I don't want to use that word. But what is there a piece of in terms of, weight gain during pregnancy? There's such a range of what is typical. I also think there's a misconception that, being pregnant means gaining 20, 30, 40 pounds. So especially as we're talking about the nutrition piece, what do you guys see as guidelines and recommendations?
So really great question. We as a company, that's actually not our jurisdiction. That is towards the doctors. Research shows that if you gain more than 50 pounds during pregnancy, there can be a lot of health issues down the road for you and potentially baby. What I know can be in the normal range is 25 to 40 pounds is very typical for weight gain in pregnancy. However, it's one of the things that I don't say often, never say to people, to the client's face ever, but just in general, when women are like, yeah, I'm pregnant, I can eat whatever I want. I'm always like, you can do anything that you want. Should you? We have this cultural understanding that when we're pregnant, we can eat whatever we want. And then when, a lot of the times the conversations, when you get diagnosed with a gestational diabetes, then you say, oh, well, now I can't eat whatever I want. And then again, I don't say this on the call, but in my head, I want women to always just be nourishing themselves, always. If you want ice cream every night after you nourish yourself, okay, let's just nourish ourselves. And that isn't the case when we get pregnant. That's not what people talk about. So that's another thing that maybe this is a great platform to really talk about it. Not even for the baby. For me, when I got pregnant, especially with my second one, I was very busy and distracted with work, and I didn't prioritize my nutrition as much as I should have. And I had deficiency, bone density issues, and lost a ton of muscle because baby took everything from me. I wasn't eating it, so baby took it from me. And a lot of women, I don't think, understand that either. I know that it's not a selfish thing to be eating for you first, because baby's going to take whether you do it or not. And that's how I like to coach and educate, because I'm now left with this. Good thing I'm in this industry because I have a lot of resources. I'm still left with this deficiency that is probably going to last for the rest of my life, especially as we age. It's just really, really challenging to keep up with everything.
But that's before, even what I was saying before, as far as why a lot of the quote unquote diets that you're going to find when you Google are extra concerning at this time.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I did tangent there. 100%. Whenever we restrict any food group or isolate any food group, it's not going to work out for us. I have been talking to a lot of pregnant people. And the reason I talk about vegetarian a lot is because a lot of the time when women are vegetarian, they aren't on pregnancy because they don't feel good. And I love plant foods, and I love when you're able to be vegetarian. Personally, constitutionally, I can't do it. But even that, a lot of women will struggle because the body is needing just this constant intake of all the types of proteins, all the types of carbohydrates and fats and fibers and vitamins and minerals. And the other thing that I like to talk about too, a lot of women are like, oh, I'm taking my prenatal. It's not going to fix everything, especially if your digestive system doesn't absorb as well as it should, which is extremely typical because, again, a lot of us aren't in this industry and don't understand how our bodies work and what damage we can do 20 to 30 years before we get pregnant just by eating the standard American diet.
Yeah. All right. So that's nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about movement. And it's funny because doctors will say, don't do too much, right, when you're pregnant. And we did an interview with a prenatal trainer. I want to say it was back in 2019. So you guys can go find that one. But she talked about it as, giving birth is like our personal human Olympics. And so why would it make any sense to stop training for the 9 months in advance of your personal human Olympics, right? But with that said, right, I'm curious what you see and talk about and recommend with gestational diabetes in the mix.
So the recommendation for us with pregnancy and working on is don't do anything that you haven't done when you weren't pregnant. Like don't start working out when you're pregnant. So I hope that's aligned with what this training.
Yeah, but it's the idea of like,
but not stopping. Oh my goodness.
Right.
If your body's used to it, I definitely align on that piece.
I also think there's a piece of movement versus what we think of as, quote unquote, working out.
Oh, yes.
And something that requires,
walking is the gold standard. And it's incredible how little we walk. The average person gets 3,000 steps a day. And the recommendation is at least 8, if not more. And when you eat a meal, if you're able to go for a 10, 15, 20-minute walk after a meal, that can decrease how high or how long your blood sugars stay up by 25%. It's the smallest things. It's making time for it. So our recommendations are very simple. Walk, go for walks, move, do not sit for a long time. But to be honest, this is what I would recommend to pregnant women. And what I love about our program is this program that we run is like a blood sugar balancing program, which is not necessarily, it's specific to that individual we're in front of, and they can carry on after pregnancy. Because we're not dieting, we are taking what they're already doing and just
refining. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sleep and stress in whatever order you want to take them.
So sleep, we acknowledge because there's not much we can do. There's research that shows, especially in the 3rd trimester, your body is preparing you for the birth and for having a child and actively keeping you up or disrupting your sleep. And I'm such a fan of my body. And when I read that research, I was very disappointed. I just don't need to prepare to not sleep. So with sleep, we acknowledge it because when you don't have a good sleep, you wake up stressed, and stress naturally increases your blood sugar levels. And there is very little, if nothing, that we can do about that, especially in the 3rd trimester. So to decrease the stress, we acknowledge and we move on. And in terms of stress, this is where, it's how do you manage it? Because there's at least in my world, there's no such thing as I don't have stress.
Right.
There's what do I do when I get stressed? What do I do when XYZ happens? A lot of people are working and already have kids of their own, or they are nervous about maternity leave and potentially losing their job. It can actually get very overwhelming and somewhat in a negative space, which causes a lot of stress. So a lot of our coaching sessions can support with understanding where they are, understanding their environment, and giving them very specific tips on, going for a walk or taking a step away from any screens for at least 20 minutes. Things like that are very simple, very doable. And then they'll give us feedback whether or not it works.
Yeah. And I think sleep is one of those pieces that these days, I think more and more people are focused on it. I talk about it all the time. I call it the ultimate biohack. And so it's sort of whatever we can do. And I think on the stress piece, part of the added challenge is what people's non-pregnancy coping mechanisms are, which tend to be intense movement or alcohol or other things that during pregnancy are maybe not what they're doing. So what are some of the things that you recommend specifically for stress that people can do? And obviously this works for everybody, not just those, during pregnancy.
Again, walking is my number one thing. Just getting away from the environment, just like getting up and going to a different room can be helpful. Lying down, taking a nap. I know it's even 5 or 10 minutes. That recommendation people usually laugh at, and then they do it and they're very, very happy they did. And a lot of the time journaling, just writing down, especially now, I don't know about anyone else. When I was pregnant, mentally, I will never get pregnant again. Let's just say that. And a lot of the things in my head were staying in my head and just ruminating and not like, then all of a sudden I was in this different reality. So journaling for me was very helpful, just writing down what was in my head, reading it and being like, oh, this is okay. So we can move on. Those are my top 3. So going for a walk, taking a step away, napping, or journaling. Doesn't include alcohol, doesn't include going for like a ridiculous run, or even like smoking weed. I'm sure that a lot of people do that to de-stress. I never thought about it that way. Thank you. I'm like,
you're welcome. Yeah.
I just feel like everyone is so stressed nowadays.
Right. For sure. And I think I just want to highlight again what you said before, that especially as we're talking about gestational diabetes, the stress and the poor sleep, right? The physiology of stress and poor sleep make us less insulin sensitive. So really taking those on as pieces of this puzzle is really important.
It works so synergistically when my clients they'll have a really good dinner, they'll go for a walk. And because they had really good food and then went for a walk, their stress is naturally lower than it was, a couple weeks before. And because they walked it off and had a good meal, their sleep's better. This is why you cannot isolate in general. Isolate things when you're starting out so that you're not doing 15 things at once. Once you take a step back and look at how they all weave in together, it's pretty magical.
Absolutely. All right. A final thought, something to wrap this up, or anything we missed?
I would say pregnancy is really challenging, and getting the gestational diabetes diagnosis doesn't have to be as scary as the healthcare system right now. I genuinely do not believe that they intentionally make it as scary as it is. However, it's really nice to know that there are companies out there that are mitigating this really intense, like, you failed, now go prick your finger 4 times a day and, follow this book on eating whatever their diet is. Again, if you ever get this diagnosis, or if you know anyone who has, give them a hug and don't be so hard on yourself, because it is extremely manageable when you have the right team behind you.
Absolutely. All right. Are you ready for our short list of rapid fire off-topic questions?
I am.
All right. What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week? Not that anything's naughty. Everybody's sort of like, well, I don't see things that way. I'm like, I don't either. Give me the salad and the fries of your week.
I love it. Salad would definitely be getting outside, going for 20-minute walks every couple of hours, because things are really, really busy, and making that time and space for myself, beautiful. The fries would be the ice cream that I've had the last 2 nights in a row, because we felt like it and we love ice cream, and we didn't eat the whole tub like we used to. So it was a win.
What's your flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you weren't the chief success officer at RenewRx, what would you do?
I would start another business that was focused on more culinary. I want every person to feel confident in the kitchen. That's what I want. That's what I would do. That's what my mission would be.
Awesome. Your favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise, or you could give us a fiction book.
I mean, Harry Potter is fiction. Like, I just obsessed because it's amazing. And Mindset Mentor, he has a book called Level Up. Really great book.
Awesome. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Diabetes, because it's just really, really, it's a really challenging and potentially preventable disease. So I would cure it by showing people how to do it.
If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
So if I wanted to be in New York right now, being there
just
immediately.
Teleport?
Yes, teleportation. Mm-hmm.
That's mine, yeah. All right, what's your biggest pet peeve?
People who know I'm a nutritionist and ask me like what they think about their plate when they're not paying me to or if it's just at a party and they know I'm a nutritionist. Well, what, like, don't judge me. I'm like, you're not paying me. I don't care.
Right. All right, last one. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
Honestly, leveraging AI in a very positive way.
Yeah. Well, Kelly Carter, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody how to connect with you, where to learn more, all the things.
Yeah. So RenewRx is the business. So RenewRx.health is the socials and the website. And then Kelly at RenewRx.health is my email. best way to connect with me.
Perfect. And we'll put links to everything in the episode notes for everybody. Just appreciate your time and generosity to share this with everybody.
Well, this has been so fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right, friends. On Friday, in this week's bite-sized bonus episode Nutrition Nugget, we're talking about Khloe Kardashian's popcorn called Cloud Protein Popcorn. So I was at a party at someone's apartment in New York. They had it. I tried it. I was very impressed with the flavor. And admittedly, I did not take the bag and check it out. I figured we'll do that together. So I made a note, added it to the list. So that's coming this Friday in this week's bite-sized bonus episode, Nutrition Nugget. Be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you on Friday morning at 3 a.m. when it goes live, 3 a.m. Eastern. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I truly love hearing from you. And Kelly Carter, thank you again for being here and hanging out for our episode and our Nutrition Nugget.
No problem. That was fun. Oh my goodness.
Awesome. All right, friends, if you're not already, become a member. Join us in the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, but above all, it supports your health. On top of this week's episode in full video with the behind the scenes pieces and your 24/7 access to Ask Me Anything, you'll get this week's recipe for the wholesome no-bake carrot cake bites. So until next week, remember, gestational diabetes does not mean that you failed. It does not mean that you're doomed. In fact, it just might require a couple adjustments to your nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.